From the Baralla branch, and Michael Perry from Auburn Lidcombe Central branch will be the co-chair. And welcome to the public forum. First of all, I'd like to say that we've got representatives from Baralla branch, Granville Central, Granville East, Guildford, Marylands, and interstate visitors and Country New South Wales visitors. So it's quite a large forum. And I'd like to praise early on in the piece Auburn branch for doing some amazing organisation, but more about that when Michael talks later on. But I have to single out the chef, Vince, otherwise we'll be in trouble. and the Perrys and Helen Westwood in her absence for providing the drinks. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Luke Foley, who needs no introduction for us.
Well, Michael, thank you, and thanks to the SEC and the Labor Party branches here who've put this on. This is a topic of significant issue in our local community. Many Palestinian residents and indeed citizens here in this part of Western Sydney, so it's an issue of significant community concern. I must say, the last time we were together as an SEC, I was reporting to you on my plans to knock over Mr. Baird. I can say no, you should have come. 2 years ahead of schedule. But I think we were together just after those wonderful by-election results. We now face a challenge. We've had the first parliamentary sitting fortnight of the year. It's clear to us that it's a significantly weaker government. In fact, I was just saying outside, if you look at the top half of the cabinet that came to office in 2011 as a new government, every one of them is gone except for Ms. Berejiklian. She was the Transport Minister, but the Premier, Deputy Premier, Treasurer, Health Minister, Education Minister, Attorney General, Police Minister, Roads Minister, they are all gone. And none of the people serving in those jobs today are as competent or as knowledgeable in those portfolios as the people who held those jobs when this government came to office. It's a real sense of momentum, I think, on the Labor side of the House. And yesterday I launched Labor's campaign for the Gosford by-election. Sad circumstances, a wonderful woman in Cathy Smith who has had to retire. She's battling cancer. Indeed, her husband yesterday, Bob, asked me to thank you for the letter you sent her. Cathy's a wonderful woman, and she's hung in there for over 6 months now, whilst facing a real challenge, the fight of her life. But I said to the caucus, these are the challenges, by-elections, that we have to tackle head on. In order to win government from opposition, these are the tests we have to pass. I think we passed with flying colours in Wollongong and Canterbury. In Orange, we served to bring down a Deputy Premier. And now we have a by-election in the state's most marginal seat. I know that party members here, so many of you I saw on the booths in Canterbury last November. I know you'll pitch in again in the battle for Gosford, and we have a candidate there we can be really proud of. An elite athlete, 7 times Paralympian, gold medalist representing our country, but a local teacher, a local mentor to young people, lives and works in that electorate in Woy Woy, a local hero, known by the whole community, and someone from the Labor Party branches, a member of the Woy Woy branch for the last 4 or 5 years. So I couldn't be prouder. I think it's a sign of state Labor's momentum that we're attracting candidates of the calibre of Liesl Tesh.
So we'll go forward there. We fired the starter's gun yesterday, and Liesl says she's going for gold in Gosford. Seems a pretty good slogan for us as we embark on a by-election campaign. Yet another test for the state party, but I know all members of the caucus and of the party will rally to the cause as we fight that by-election. No one gives me more advice than Bob. He's done what we've set out to achieve. Taken Labor from opposition to government, defeated a Conservative government, brought down a high-flying Premier in Griner, and in tackling Baird, it was always Bob who I turned to for advice and support. But he's here today to speak with us about a very important topic. Of course, at the level of state politics, we don't have any foreign affairs power or jurisdiction. But I thought, when I became leader, what could I do, perhaps as a gesture of solidarity? So I was the first political leader in Australia to say, if any of our MPs go to Israel, that's fine, but you must spend an equivalent amount of time in Palestine. Not a couple of hours, but equivalent time, equal time, to see firsthand the circumstances that the Palestinian people confront every day. I'm pleased to say that policy has now been adopted by my friend Anastasia Palaszczuk, the Labor Premier of Queensland. And I think we'll be able to say in a few years, Bob, that every Labor leader will adopt this policy for his or her parliamentary party. I think now that Anastasia's followed suit, that this will just gradually become the norm for Labor leaders and Labor parliamentarians to adopt this policy. So, whilst at the level of state government we don't have any foreign affairs power, we can still make statements like that and adopt policies for ourselves and make statements that are of themselves important statements of solidarity. On that note, I think nobody in Australian public life at the moment is doing more to highlight what the Palestinian people are confronting. Nobody's doing more to highlight some of the counterproductive and extreme policies of the current right-wing Israeli government than Bob Carr. So Bob, you're most welcome. Thank you to me and the party, and party members here in Auburn and our friends very much have been looking forward to you joining us today and speaking about in the week an Israeli Prime Minister's been in Australia, speaking about the circumstances on the ground.
Well, Luke, thank you very much for the welcome. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and to praise you once again for being bold and being brave, and getting out there and being the first political leader in Australia to say to his parliamentary team, if you receive a free trip from one of the pro-Israel organisations and go to Israel, you must spend equivalent time looking at Palestinian conditions on the West Bank. It was a brave thing to do. Luke did it as a new leader of the party, and he deserves our praise and our support. It was a very concrete move. And it's wonderful to have people here who, in the Labor Party, got to know the electorate with some familiarity, then especially. So great to be with you. Now, a lovely lady describes herself as one of the organisation Jews Against the Occupation. And thank you for being here. Because in this battle for Palestinian rights, there are few braver than Israelis who go out and demonstrate next to Palestinians for their rights. And their role is so significant because they speak for a long history of Jewish humanitarianism and liberalism, and in their brave acts identifying with Palestinians and their just actions, they're really saying that tradition of Jewish liberalism won't be snuffed out by the extremists and the chauvinists and the racists. And they're keeping alive something that's been very important in the history of our civilization. And those of you here, I urge, whenever there's a hint of anti-Semitism in the community, to say that is wrong. We've got brave Jews on our side, and anti-Semitism is a horrific species of racism, given its history, given the crimes it produced in the last century. And we've got to exalt Jews and Israelis who take up the cause of the Palestinians. Let me tell you what the occupation means with an anecdote. It's 2015, it's in the middle of a baking summer, a baking Middle Eastern summer. And in Area C of the West Bank, land that would be a Palestinian state, the Palestinians have built for themselves in a beautiful rocky area something they need for recreation, a swimming pool. And well-off Palestinians in America donated money so this little community could have a swimming pool that could be enjoyed by Palestinian youngsters in pretty poor circumstances. And I'm quoting from Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper here, so let there be no doubt about the validity of the story. And the author says, it's a day that won't be forgotten in the arid, far-flung village of El Carmel in the southern reaches of Mount Hebron. Even now, 2 months later, the residents are overwrought when they tell the story of what happened. Their rage and their humiliation is still palpable. He says no one was beaten that day, no one was arrested, no disaster occurred, but what happened will not be forgotten. The Palestinian kids are there splashing in the water. They're proud of an area that their community has built up. And all of a sudden, the soldiers of the Israeli Defence Force arrive with bayonets drawn. And they order the kids and the adults from the pool. There are 2 busloads of Israeli settlers that draw in, and everyone's got to get out of the pool to make way for the lords of the land. So these are settlers, many of them from America, who've been planted in these settlements on the West Bank as a deliberate strategy, as I'll establish in a moment, to incorporate it in a greater Israel. And the armed forces are there to take on mainly Palestinian kids, to get them out of the pool, so that the hundreds of settlers on the Passover week holiday, taking a heritage trip through land that they argue has been theirs from biblical times, they can use the pool. This is Area A, which under the Oslo Accords is under Palestinian control, but who cares? We know who's in control this day. And the people sustained a humiliation. One of them is quoted in the area as saying they even let their dogs into the pool, which is repellent in Arabic custom. It was a little humiliation, no arrests, no bashings, no beatings, but the sort of trauma that is not forgotten. Because the Israeli army and the system that controls this Arab land is saying, you are a lesser people than we. There are stories like this from the time of apartheid in South Africa, or white rule in the south of the United States. Segregation. This is the world of apartheid. It's the world of ritualized humiliation. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what occupation is. This debate's not about whether you're pro-Israel or anti-Israel. I concede that Israel, within the 1967 boundaries, is a democracy, that courts can overrule decisions of its government, that there is in Israel self-criticism and debate that we can all admire. I concede that. But this is not about the character of Israel. This is about the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, an occupation that's now gone on for 50 years. So it's not whether you, you like or dislike Israel. It's not whether Israel's a democracy with start-up industries that can be envied and emulated. It's not whether Israel is good or bad. It's that Israel has occupied Palestinian land for 50 years. This is about the occupation. It's whether that occupation will congeal into a permanent arrangement, or whether, as the world has been intent since the early 1990s, that land becomes a Palestinian state. That's what this is about. So whenever anyone says to you, you're being anti-Israeli, you're ignoring the achievements of Israel, that's a distraction. It is about the occupation. And as we debate this issue towards the next National ALP conference and beyond, keep your focus on the fact that for 50 years, the West Bank has been occupied by Israel, and that means, let me quote the figures, 2.9 million Arabs on the West Bank are being ruled by an ethnic and religious minority, and that minority is growing as settlements are spread out over Palestinian land in defiance of international law. And this is a crucial point. As Foreign Minister, I asked DFAT to give me the advice, and they gave it to me. I've got it here. It's a 2-page summary that I tabled at Senate estimates, and it says clearly that a conquering power is not able to settle its own population on land it's conquered in war. This is from the 4th Protocol of the Geneva Convention. And it was established after the Second World War. And the Israeli settlements being planted on the land that was acquired by the Israelis in 1967, all of them are comprehensively illegal under international law. As your foreign minister in the Gillard and Rudd governments, I was intent on winning this argument and pressing it at every point. And in the UN, under the Labor government, we used to vote each year for a resolution in the General Assembly that said we are opposed to settlements, and all settlements are illegal under international law. They're a breach of the Geneva Convention. Now, under this government, we've changed our vote. We've gone back to voting the way Netanyahu would like. Here's another argument to bear in mind. The choice here in this debate is between a position taken by Obama and a position taken by Trump. Obama said, with John Kerry as his Secretary of State, that this can't go on. And America allowed, in the last days of the Obama presidency, a motion to get through the Security Council. America could have vetoed it. They would have vetoed it under a different president, under Trump, if it had been inaugurated, possibly under Hillary Clinton. Obama deliberately allowed that resolution to go through, a resolution introduced by New Zealand and by a number of other nations, Venezuela, Egypt, Malaysia. New Zealand stood very strongly on that. I rang their foreign minister, Murray McCulley, and congratulated him. He said he's getting flack. He said, I'm getting a lot of flack for that. I said, well, any time you take on the Israel lobby, which represents the most extreme element of the Jewish community, you cop flack. But you did the right thing. But we can't. In Australia, we can't. Even Trump the other day said, when he was chatting with Netanyahu in the Oval Office, he said, you ought to cool those settlements, or words to that effect. Well, that's not the position taken by the Turnbull government. They won't utter a criticism. Turnbull didn't say that when he was with Netanyahu. He didn't say we should cool the settlements, pull the settlements back. Nothing doing. So you can say accurately that the present government in Australia has got a policy to the right of Trump on this matter of settlements. So I said in an article I wrote for the Herald a couple of months ago that it is all a con by the Israeli government. 60% of the members of Netanyahu's cabinet are on record saying we oppose a Palestinian state, we'll never allow it. Netanyahu said that himself in the last Israeli elections. He won election on it and tried to backpedal, saying something softer for the international audience, which was ready to slap him down, ready to rebuke him. That's where we are today, with settlements continuing to be laid out with the slightest encouragement from Trump. Netanyahu announced another 3,000 settlements, and that's the con. The con is that when they're addressing an international audience, the right-wingers and chauvinists and religious extremists in Israel say, no, we believe in a two-state solution. In other words, a Palestinian state. But in the meantime, they're laying out settlements, including settlements, 40% of them are deep inside the territory of what would be a Palestinian state. They're well in the east of the land. They're not along the 1967 border where they'd be subject to a mutually agreed trade-off with the Palestinians. They're deep in Palestinian land, in the land which would form the basis for a Palestinian state. So it is a con. I remember when I was Premier, going down to chat with it might have been just after I stepped down as Premier, having a chat with a very prominent businessman, Jewish background, strong supporter of Israel. And he said, Bob, the mood is in Israel to make peace, to cut a deal. And I said, yes, but what about all these settlements? And he said, Bob, don't worry about it. He said, when there's a deal for peace, the Israeli government will forego those settlements, they'll withdraw them. Well, within a few years, increasing settlement activity has lifted the numbers to where it stands now, 500,000. So that leader of the Jewish community was giving me that assurance when there might have been, say, 250,000 settlers. In another 7 years, the numbers have gone up to 500,000. So what's going on here? It's a land grab, it's a land theft, and a displacement of the Palestinian population through the creeping annexation that the settlement process represents. That's what's at work here. And if the intention of the Israeli government is to withdraw settlements when a peace deal is imminent, why plant them now? The settlements are being planted to preempt the possibility of a Palestinian state. That's what's so fundamentally wrong about it. And I've got to note now that the settlers are such a big lobby in Israel. All those 500,000 settlers, they vote in Israeli elections. They sit in the cabinet. The Jewish Homeland Party is the strongest party in the Knesset, and it represents settlements. The former Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, who's now Defence Minister, holds very extreme views. He lives on a settlement. The settlements are now the symbol of Israel. It used to be the kibbutz, a sort of socialistic agricultural experiment. That used to be the symbol of Israel. The symbol of Israel now is a settlement block on Palestinian land, full of people with extreme religious views brought in from the United States or Australia or elsewhere to take the place of the Palestinian population. Only 3 weeks ago, the Knesset passed legislation that allows the government simply to seize private Palestinian land on behalf of settlers. Benny Begin, who's a hardline right-wing minister in this government, in the Netanyahu government, himself described it as a looting bill. Quote, a looting bill, unquote. Now, if I said that, I'd be criticised in the pages of The Australian as being inflammatory in my language. But he's a member of Netanyahu's government saying this legislation, enacted by the Knesset, is a looting bill. Netanyahu, when he's asked about this in Australia, says, oh, it's likely to be overturned in the Supreme Court of Israel. Now, that's hardly a satisfactory answer from the leader of a state that's supposed to be democratic. We've passed this. It is a foul bit of legislation. It forces Palestinians off their land, but it's going to be done over in the courts. If you concede it's wrong, why was it enacted with the support of your political colleagues. Again, it's the con being presented to the world by a government of chauvinists tinged by racist sentiment, a chauvinist government with ultra-religious elements in it. Now, we've got a challenge in Australia because the Jewish community here, as our friend from Jews Against the Occupation will confirm, is about as right-wing as the Jewish community in any part of the world. In the United States, there's a stronger liberal element in the Jewish community than there is in Australia. And governments tend to give in to them, but not the Labor Party. I'm very proud to say that at recent Labor Party conferences, we've stood up for the Palestinians, and New South Wales has not been in the background on this, but we've been in the lead. The conference that I was able to move, and the figure with the Labor right and someone from the left was able to second, 2014, 2015, registered that if the settlement process continues and there's no progress towards a Palestinian state, then the next Labor government should simply join 137 other countries that have already recognised the state of Palestine. And then at the next, and then we had a national conference, and the national conference, after a lot of debate and a lot of arguing and a lot of ups and downs, you know, the Labor Party, our grand old party, the Labor Party in the end did absolutely the right thing, and Tony Burke, a friend of mine, New South Wales Labor, a former colleague in the State Parliament, now a Federal Shadow Minister of course, and Wendy Turner from Queensland, a strong advocate of the Palestinian cause, moved a motion that said in its final paragraph, if the settlement process goes on and there's no progress towards a Palestinian state, then the next Labor government will consult like-minded nations who've already recognised Palestine with the objective of recognising a Palestinian state. Now, what I'm putting to you as rank and file members of the Labor Party is that we have now passed that benchmark. The settlements have gone on. Only a few weeks ago, Netanyahu announcing another few thousand. The prospect of a negotiated solution has faded because the Israelis are holding out, and you have that on the authority of John Kerry and other officials in the Obama administration. Every time we got close to a settlement, John Kerry said, every time we got close to an agreement, a negotiated agreement, there'd be another announcement of settlements that would blow it sky high. We've passed the threshold that the resolution carried at the last National ALP conference set. And therefore we're entitled at our state conference in July this year to move a motion saying no, we've passed that test. The next Labor government, in the interest of peace, with security guarantees for Israel, should recognise Palestine. Simple as that. Join 137 other nations that say we recognise the government in Ramallah as being the appropriate authority for the land of the West Bank. That's what we should do in the Labor Party, and we can do it with your support. And then at the next national conference, which is next year, we should upgrade the motion, the resolution carried at the last one, and place on the books a motion that says in simple, elegant language, it's time to recognise Palestine. But if we're going to get to that point and offer justice to the Palestinian people and offer them hope, just think for a moment of the Palestinians subjected to daily humiliation, as exemplified by the story I shared with you about that swimming pool and the army arriving, getting the Palestinian kids out of the pool to make way for busloads of settlers. If we're to give them hope that they can have a nation of their own, that the wretched people of Gaza, 1.5 million people in Gaza, this vast slum, many of those families with keys to the homes they had in Israel before 1948, in Palestine before 1948. If we're to give them hope that they can move out of Gaza, they can do decent things in Gaza, of course, if they choose to go and living there, but they've got the option of living on the West Bank. the other part of the Palestinian sovereignty. We've got to show that even in a country like Australia, so close to Israel historically, we can see the Palestinian cause. And we've got to send a message to Israel, including the liberals in Israel, who are appalled by the behaviour of Netanyahu, that they've got friends on the other side of the world, that there are Australians with a record of support for Israel who are saying, no, your government has gone too far, and has lost friends for Israel in countries previously rusted on. So a message to the Palestinians, a message of hope, and a necessary rebuke to Israel, with a message of encouragement to the Israelis who oppose the policy of their own government. So I'd like you to do several things. One, move a motion at your next Labor Party branch meeting, and we've got draft motions here, to go to ALP head office, to get on the agenda for the next state conference. That's the first thing. To see that we speak out, and that we're showing Arabic background, Palestinian background Australian citizens they've got friends in the Australian Labor Party. And second, we've got to encourage, there's enormous lobbying from the other side, but and that's fair enough. I'm not criticising the Jewish community and the Israel lobby in Australia for getting out, bringing delegations in to see members of Parliament to put their case. But Arabic background Australians, people with Palestinian heritage in particular, have got to organise delegations to go and see their local MPs on a rolling basis and put their case, to put it to coalition MPs and to Labor MPs, state and federal, and to tell them stories. Tell them stories. What does it mean to have a Palestinian heritage? What happened in 1948? We fled our home. We fled our home because we heard of massacres in other villages. We fled with a backpack or a mule and a bit of luggage. We got over the border into Lebanon. The family lived in a refugee camp there, or in Jordan, or on the West Bank. For years, we end up in Australia. Those stories make clear that this is not an abstract proposition. It's the story of a people that have been displaced and are going on being displaced. Remember that on the West Bank today, Palestinian houses are being demolished. Old villages, those of the Bedouin, for example, are being bulldozed by Israeli Defence Force bulldozers. That if a young Palestinian leaves the West Bank to go and study in Europe or the United States, they could well be denied the right to return. The displacement continues. We've got to send a message to them. So the second thing you need to do is to organise people in the Arabic community to see their members of Parliament and tell their stories and put their case the same way the Jewish community has been making the case for Israel. And the third thing is to keep a focus on the next national conference of the Labor Party, because Bob Hawke, speaking out as a proven friend of Israel, backed by Kevin Rudd, backed by Gareth Evans, has made it clear that Labor, it's now time for Labor to respond. And I think left and right, New South Wales, Victoria, we've got to get moving on this, and to see that beyond the state conference in July, the national conference, whenever it's held next year, will carry a motion. There aren't many occasions, and I'll conclude with this, there aren't many occasions when we lay down a position in foreign policy, it can have a bit of reverberation around the rest of the world, but this is one case. This is one example, because things are so neurologically tense between Israel and Palestine. When a friend of Israel, like Australia, moves to make a gesture, the Palestinians say, gee, this is an interesting development, this is significant, and the Israelis do the same. Our extreme behaviour, they would say, that is, the extreme behaviour of Israel, is causing friends of ours as far off as Australia to think again. So that's why this is significant. Motions from your branch. A motion saying it's time to recognise Palestine at the next state conference at Sydney Town Hall, and a motion, Mike, at the national conference when it's held next year. I want to congratulate you. It's just tremendous. I'm sure Luke feels this, and my former parliamentary colleagues, that members of the Australian Labor Party can turn out on a Saturday on a foreign policy question that says that despite all the talk about conventional politics being in decline, there is still a market for ideas and for organisation. An idea that it's now time for Australia to recognise Palestine, and an organisation, this great Australian Labor Party of ours, to give effect to it. We're the only ones who can do it. Thanks for turning up, and Luke, thanks for all that you've done for this cause. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move now to a period of